guys, and welcome to Modismos in La Brecha. My name is Nathaniel Fernandez and welcome to our channel. Now the first thing I want to do today is really apologize for the delay in releasing this video. Right, having done that, let's just get down to it. So our modismo for today is al chile. Now you can use al chile when you want to ask the question, oh really? So in case somebody says something that you don't really believe, you can say al chile, or you could say la neta, and the response could be, or it could be al chile or neta. So you could use, it's the same thing that's used to ask the question and to respond. Right, so those are some interesting modismos that I picked up during my time in Mexico. Now, what I want to do today really is talk about some of the things that I really learned while I was in Mexico. Now, the first thing that was really striking was that the leadership that the young people have in the community in Mexico is really amazing. I was working with people who were 21 and 20s, and they were taking charge of other children of the age maybe 13, 14, and they were really helping them become better children and better, you could say almost better boys and better men. And I was really inspired by these guys who took charge voluntarily to teach smaller kids what they know. And again, I met people who were a little older than me, maybe 27, and they took charge of people who were a little younger than us. So like the 27-year-old would take charge of people who were like 23, 24, the single people. And again, the 23, 24 would take charge of the people who were 21, 22, and then those people would take charge of the people who were even younger. So this sort of looking after people who are younger than you, leading them, was really something that really struck me and really, you could say, inspired me even to take on more leadership roles when I come back to India, right? Now, another thing that really I learned in Mexico was to make a schedule and to stick to it, right? Before I went for this gap year, before I had this whole experience, my life was just like here and there and everywhere. But once I went there and I realized, there is so much to do and I really need to structure my time and get that into place. That really helped me a lot. So I have like now a Word document where I like, okay, at this point I do this, and these are my plans for this month, and these are the meetings I have, and I now have a Google Calendar that says, okay, you got to do this, because otherwise, once more things come, you won't be able to organize. I wasn't able to organize myself, and so I had to like put this into order, right? So that's a very, very good thing that I learned, and I suggest it to everybody. Really, you make a schedule and then stick to it, and you can keep revising your schedule, right? Another thing that I learned while I was in Mexico is that as a human, I'm distracted really easily, and especially when I was trying to pray and spend some time in silence, I was always having thoughts that came to my mind, thoughts I didn't want to think about, just random stuff really sometimes. And I realized what I need to do is really put more attention, and it's only as you practice staying quiet and calming yourself down that this works. And so initially it was quite hard really to pray and to keep quiet, but as I continued doing it, it got better. Another thing that I learned that was really beneficial to me is that it's a good practice to fast maybe one day a week, right? So, but one of the bad things that I also learned during this process of fasting is that if you fast, you shouldn't eat after you fast. Like, you shouldn't eat in excess after you fast. That was something I tended to do. So I would fast till maybe 6 o'clock in the evening, and then the minute it's 6 o'clock, I would go and eat more than I would have eaten normally for dinner. And that was something that I had to work on as well, that if you're fasting, you need to control how much you eat after you fast and not overindulge later on, right? So these are some of the things that I learned. Now, when I was in Mexico, there were some days when I had a lot of time to do stuff, and so I would end up really watching a lot of stand-up comedy. Now, I tell you this because stand-up comedy is fun, right? It's really good fun to watch, and it's good for laughs. But I also, at some point, realized I was doing too much of it, and so what I started to do instead was to try and watch things that were more helpful. So I started watching a lot of Peter Kreeft and other apologetics on YouTube, and it was very interesting to see these debates on YouTube. And then I started reading a book called The Reason for God also, which was again very helpful in my understanding of God and Christ, and why what happened, and a lot of questions that we as young people struggle with, they were answered in these videos. And it was very interesting, especially to see Ravi Zacharias, again another very good apologetic. So he was asked questions during some of his seminars, and these were some of the questions that at points I had, and it was very interesting to see how he responded and his thought process. And it really showed me that, you don't really need to have blind faith, but your faith is backed by reason. So your faith in God is really backed by reason, and it's not just my parents told me and therefore I believe, but there is some amount of reasoning behind it. So that was another very interesting thing that I learned during my gap year. Another habit really I picked up during the gap year was to go for confession quite often. And so I think I would go for confession every couple of weeks. And this helped me a lot. It helped me to not sin as much. And the only funny thing was that I would always have to write my confession down before I go for confession, and then I would have to translate it into Spanish, because I did my confession in Spanish. And so I learned a whole bunch of words, but they're not really the words that we would use in common talk, right? Speaking of words, I wanted to just tell you this one instance, right? So we were sitting at some place, and I realized when we speak English, the word shit is quite commonly used, but in Mexico, because they don't speak it as the natural, like as we speak English, the word shit that I previously mentioned was really construed as a bad word. Like in India, we just use it here and there. It's not such a big deal, but over there they really consider it as a bad word. And so I had to really not use that word, and so I started using shoot instead. And yeah, so that was an interesting thing that I had to learn to do. So yeah, those are the things I wanted to talk about this week. And yeah, please continue to watch my videos, subscribe, like, and give me a thumbs up. Also share it with your friends, and I'll see you next week.